Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Stu Clark here. So this is the third part when we're looking at depth of field for wildlife photography. If you haven't checked out the first two videos in this series, looking at lens length and then getting close to your subject. This one I think is the most important one because this one plays on those two. Obviously, you have the lens you have. You can get as close as you can, but this one is kind of important because just because you get close doesn't mean you're getting distance from your subject to the background. And this one is, it's quite tough because the closer your subject is to the background, you can only isolate it so much. Is in most normal shooting conditions, how close you can get to your subject is going to be, it's really going to depend on your subject. Sometimes some birds allow you to get nice and close. Some birds, they want no part of you and you just cannot get close to them no matter what you do. When it comes to getting how far they are from the background, there are a number of factors that come into play. My backyard feeder setup, for example, I've got it set up so that the perches and everything I know are far enough distance from the background that where my blind is set up, I can completely blur the background out. And it's a situation where I've got full control of the setup, so I can kind of get that dialed in perfectly. I need to move the perches back a little bit or move the whole setup closer to my blind or further from the background or closer to the background. You can play with it. And because you're in a blind, the birds don't know you're there. So when we're talking about in the field, especially we're talking about shorebirds and waterfowl, it's kind of the focus of today's video. There's certain things that play into it. And one of the biggest one is angles. And come out to an estuary like this, you invariably are going to see a group of photographers standing on the beach shooting down on their subject. The problem with that is that if you're standing up here and you've got your subject down below here, you're shooting right when you hit your subject, the background is centimeters away from your subject. So it's completely impossible to isolate your subject from that background. Doesn't matter if you're shooting with a 600 f4, you're still not going to be able to isolate your subject from the background. Even though your depth of field might only be a couple centimeters, the background is still so close. You're going to see a ton of detail from the background in the image. So that's where getting low is the starting point for isolating your subject. And you saw in the previous video, you saw I'm kind of getting quite low to try and get these gulls on a log over here. But getting low is only part of the equation because depending on the beach you're on, the shooting situation you're on, there's going to be a bunch of variables going to determine how low you can get. And ducks on the water versus shorebirds on the shore are also going to be quite different. So say you're walking down like this beach here, if you go 20 feet up the beach this side of me, the beach is probably 18 inches to 2 feet higher than where I am. And so if you're laying down over there shooting towards the water, you're still shooting on quite an angle. So you're still going to struggle with shooting through the bird and getting the water quite close behind it. And that's one of the, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you'll see a lot of photographers do. Sometimes you don't have an option. Sometimes lower's always going to be better than standing. Sometimes you can only get so low. I'm sitting on a log right here. If the bird is on the back side of the log, you can't get any lower than the log. You're trying to shoot over it. So when you're approaching the scene, trying to determine where you want to approach from, that's the one thing you do have when you've got a subject, is you can try and decide how you're going to approach your subjects. And that's something to really kind of take into account. So, if the bird was on this side of the log here, I wouldn't come from this side of the log. I would approach it from up sun side of it so that I can get lower and get behind the log and get lower down so the log is not going to impede my shot. Again, sometimes some of these variables are just, you can't get around it. there's reeds there, there's a bunch of logs there. You can't get low enough. So sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. And you can only isolate your subject so much depending on the environment you're in. Logs, reeds, grasses, sometimes you just can't get around it. But when you have the opportunity where you can kind of approach from lower, always do that. And like I said, and the last video, when we're talking about getting closer, a lot of times it's about picking your angle, making sure you're kind of getting on the level with your subject. So, you always want to try and shoot eye level, whether it's bird in a tree, birds on the beach. Trying to get eye level to your subject is the most important thing you can do. And so if you've got a sloping beach, so right, if you look, we're on a bit of a flat spot here, it's actually not too bad. But so if you're approaching, say you've got a nice angled beach, it's high tide, so the flat section is kind of out, which it is right now. So you've got quite an angled beach. If you start approaching it from up high, you're basically just shooting, even if you're super close and you've gotten as close as you can, minimum focus distance, because your subject is so close to the water behind you, because you're on that angled beach shooting down, the subject's going to be in focus. So what you want to do in this situation is you want to get to the water line and you want to shoot down the beach. So you want to shoot at the water level. So here's a great example when we're on a nice beach here. So problem with beaches all have got a grade to them. Some of them less than others. So some beaches are awesome. They're so flat that you can shoot, lay down anywhere, you're pretty much level. So you can photograph shorebirds anywhere around you. With a beach like this, it's actually got quite a grade to it. So where I am, I'm a good 2 feet above the water's edge, and I'm probably only 12, 15 feet out. So this is an example where even if I lay on the ground here, I can't isolate any shorebirds on the beach, because a lot of times shorebirds walk along the water edge. So if you're trying to shoot down the beach towards them, they're going to be, because of the way the angle of the beach is to the water, they're walking on this plane, which is you're shooting down this plane, but you're interacting with the level plane of the water at the bottom of it. So if they're walking around this edge, you've got an angle here that basically you're just shooting right into the water, even if you're laying on the ground. So this is one of those situations where where you can really kind of work into the nature of the shorebird. So if you notice around me here, so you can see the logs laying down on the beach here, right? If I lay on the beach up here, for example, so say I go and I lay down on the beach, I'm shooting downwards into that angle. And I'm just not going to be, I'm going to end up with the water as the background on all my shots. There's just no way that I'm going to be able to isolate the subject from it. But with shorebirds, there's none here, so I can't show you today, but I think I'll have some footage that I can kind of drop in to give you an example. So obviously you need to be really careful, aware of what the tides are doing. I'm about 20 minutes from the high tide right now, but it's quite a calm day. Same thing with wave action, you have to be really careful. So with shorebirds, what's going to end up happening is they're going to work along the shoreline. They're kind of feeding in all the kelp and stuff like that as they're working up and down the shoreline. It's funny, if you get low to a beach, it's amazing how many insects are in the tide line. Crabs, insects, flies, there's all kinds of activity right in the tide line. Everything's kind of taking advantage of all the food that's getting washed in with the incoming tide. So what you want to do is, if you've got a flock of birds walking down the shoreline, instead of sitting up on the beach here where you're not going to get your angle, what you want to do is you want to lay low right at where they're coming. So you want to be a foot or two above the water line. Again, you want to be careful of what the tide's doing. You want to be right at the water's edge. So as they're coming towards you, example would be as I'm laying down here, I can get right down to the water's edge and I'm in line with them up the beach. And it really makes a big difference. So as the birds are walking towards me, they're walking head on to me, and I'm not having to worry about, and I've got a beautiful depth of field, a really nice shallow depth of field as they get closer to me, and you'll be amazed at how close they will come. So yeah, it's a real good trick. You want to kind of take the, look at the terrain and kind of utilize it to your advantage. Instead, laying down on the beach in a prone position with the camera is not comfortable. We don't do it for comfort. We do it simply to get that depth of field. So with the high beach, there's no point laying down higher up on the beach. You need to work your angles and get low to where the birds are walking, and that'll dramatically improve your depth of field and really help to isolate those birds from the background and give you that pro level effect. We'll look at waterfowl first, and we'll kind of see if we can get some ducks, and we'll kind of try to get to actual water level to give you an idea of how that looks compared to shooting a little bit higher up. And when you shoot higher up, even if you're, the problem with this is that you need to be right at water level. The closer you are to water level, the better. It can be hard on the body, and it's something that I actually had to take a few years off of shorebird and waterfowl photography, just because the neck, the shoulders, you can actually injure yourself if you're not careful. So something to be really aware of. One of the beautiful things with mirrorless cameras, like with the Nikon Z8, you can flip the screen out, so you can have the camera at water level, and you don't have to be. And that really helps to just can be really help your body. Like I say, you're really hard on the body if you're not. The one thing with, I shoot everything on a tripod, especially when I'm shooting video. The problem is with this tripod head, you can see the camera can't get within a foot of the water. So in certain situations, like I said, for shorebirds and things, that can work fine, especially for shooting down the beach. You can kind of work the angles a little bit. But when it comes to shorebird photography, a lot of times I just take it off the tripod and I'll have it either on, there's some neat pods you can get for putting it so it's actually at water level, you can slide it along. But for me, I just actually rest it on the lens foot a lot of times, and that allows me to get really close to water level. It makes it a lot easier. Unfortunately for video, I have to back off a little bit just because you lose that fluidity of the fluid head and you end up with jerky footage. So I will sacrifice some of that depth of field in order to get a more fluid video. We've got some good mallards down here right now. Let's go see if we can't get them. Okay, so we got the mallards here. So right now, you can see I've got the tripod set up it's probably 2 feet off the ground. So we'll just kind of get some quick shots here while we can. So we're shooting at 500 mil. Now let's pop this off. Go to So now I'm at about probably 6 inches off the ground, off the water level here.
When comparing these two shots, the shot on the left, the camera is about 24 inches from the water. The shot on the right was about 6 inches off the water. And what you look at is you can see how the depth of field on the left-hand image, you can see how the bird is not isolated at all. It kind of just blends into the water quite a bit. It doesn't really stand out. But just getting that 18 inches lower on the shot on the right, you can see how much more the bird kind of stands out in the image. But also importantly, look at the color of the reflection. When you're higher up, you tend to get a lot more reflection of the sky on the water compared to when you're on the right. You can see I'm actually getting more of the green background, and it actually changes the exposure and color of the entire image, and definitely makes for a much higher quality looking image.
Okay. A lot of times people are going to be, you're kneeling down at the shore, and you can see the mallard there. Now, if I lay right down at water level here, so you notice a couple things happen there. So one, obviously the isolation of your subject from the background, but also what you notice it does, it elongates the reflection on the water. So you go from having, when you shoot down, you've got a really small reflection of the bird. The lower you get, it elongates it, so you get a lot more color. You can see all the color of the mallard kind of comes forward. Let's kind of shoot some video here to give you an idea too. Here's a great example. We've got a beautiful great blue heron right here. If I shoot from where I'm standing, you can see him behind me here. What happens is he's close enough to the background that I can't isolate him from the background at all. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna move down the shoreline here, get on a level plane with him. You can see him right on the rock there. Okay. So this is a great example of this where it really allows me to, you can still see some of the environment because he's tucked right up against the grasses. So you're not gonna get those out of the way. But where he's sitting is just such a beautiful spot. You can see the environment where we're shooting in here, how there's quite a big step from the beach. So getting down on the beach itself, because he's 3 feet off the ground, I don't need to worry about trying to get lower. I just need to be eye level with him. So you can see my camera is basically set up. Let's back off a little bit here. See, my camera is basically set up at eye level with him. Someone trying to shoot it from the road up there. He's saying you're just going to get the headshot, but by getting down off of this bank up here, I've got him fully in the shot, and I'm able to really get a beautiful photo and video of him.
An interesting thing to take note in these videos is just how much atmospheric disturbance is blowing off the ocean. If you look in the background, you can actually see it's almost like waves of disturbance. You can actually see them behind the heron in the distance. It's quite amazing because it was a late October day. It was crystal clear, beautiful day. It wasn't too warm. Not what you would expect for having this much disturbance, but it's just quite amazing to see. I was out there on the day, I didn't see it at all. I thought it was just super clear. But when I started going through the photos, I noticed that they actually weren't as sharp as I was expecting, given how great the light was. Till next time, hope you got some good information out of this. If you did, please like and subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you out there. Take care.